So definitely a lot of media coverage about Falun Gong has been strangely quiet over the years.
Over the years.
Yeah, that Chongqing story is incredible. And that's something people should. That's super interesting. But now it seems like there's actually in the Western media, I see a lot that Falun Gong gets labeled as like some kind of far right organization or like some kind of pro-Trump organization, which seems strange that like they're trying to lump tens of millions of people in China to American politics. But what's going on there?
What's the deal? I think there's two things going on simultaneously.
I need to point out that
Sure.
at this table, you are sitting on the far right.
Oh boy, you did that on purpose.
Yeah, but from the camera's perspective, he's actually on the far left.
Oh.
Not better.
Ooh.
All right. So anyway,
I'd really like to be there if you ask me.
Center.
But
No, Shelley and I, we're the
We're the middle path.
we're the rock.
yeah, middle path. I think there's two forces at work from what I can tell. One, I'll give you an example of, is that there is CCP propaganda that is strangely being repeated verbatim in Western media for whatever reason. For example, just in last year, October of 2020, there was a piece on sort of the Epoch Times and Falun Gong and Trump and all kinds of stuff in which they talk about Falun Gong beliefs, stating as fact all kinds of stuff which are not Falun Gong beliefs, including that we forbid interracial marriage. So this is interesting because among my Falun Gong friends and non-Falun Gong friends, there are probably more interracial marriages among the Falun Gong people. I myself am married to a woman of a different race. Demonstrably false.
Or you're just not very good at practicing Falun Gong.
Well, that might be. So it's demonstrably false. Where did this come from? Well, it's interesting. If you look at the CCP propaganda inside China, they don't talk about this because they really don't care about those issues in China. But if you look at the English language Chinese government websites that sort of vilify Falun Gong, right at the top is we forbid interracial marriage, we're intolerant in this way, that way, the other thing. So this is clearly propaganda that's false and is specifically formulated for the West. What is it doing, stated as fact, in a prominent Western media article? I don't have the answer to that question, but that's an important thing to note when we say, why is this strange coverage here? That's an element of that strange coverage. I think the second element is that, you have to look at the Falun Gong community. You're talking about if you talk, let's say in America or North America and Europe, it is predominantly first-generation Chinese, usually highly educated. They probably came over here because they got into some top universities. So here we have a first-generation ethnic minority that is being called far right and kind of lumping us in with the Proud Boys. That's
Sounds
always
like
a little
white
strange.
supremacists
Yeah,
to me.
exactly. That one was always a little bit strange. So why did that occur? I think that occurred because things got so tense with the Trump presidency that the camps became so sort of divisive that any kind of positive support for a Trump policy of the administration, like towards China, was immediately pushed off. They ignored everything else about the demographic of the group and what they may think, and they're immediately pushed off into a Trump camp, and everybody who hated the Trump administration would attack them. What you see with the Falun Gong community, again, these highly educated first-generation Chinese, is that they understand China better than almost everyone here in the West, including a lot of our policymakers. And for 2 decades, they've been saying, okay, the CCP is really evil. You guys don't get it. This is what they're going to do to you on the business front, on the political front. This is what they're doing on the human rights front. You got to do something. You got to do something. And for 3 presidential administrations, essentially nothing was done.
If only we'd listened.
Yeah, essentially it was nothing done, again, because they didn't watch your show. So we got to talk about that. So
I'll let it slide in the Bush and most of Obama administration since the show didn't exist.
All right, we'll let that go. But along comes the Trump administration, and at least coming out of the State Department and some of the foreign policy there was real action that in the Falun Gong community we saw, oh, this is going to work. This is actually recognizing some of the evil things the CCP is doing, and actually this is going to help. There was a sense in the community that there is a policy out of this administration that is going to be effective at curtailing sort of the evil things that the CCP was doing in this country, but also suppressing some of the human rights abuses that they're doing, and they approved of that. And somehow in this very divisive political environment, people would hear that voice and go, you're a Trump supporter. Get over there with the alt-right, you first-generation Chinese person. It was a bizarre experience for us. I'll just say for us, it was sort of a very bizarre experience because most of our sort of experience here in America fighting for human rights, it was very much bipartisan. And to some extent, we were even getting more attention in some cases from liberals. So for suddenly, because of recognizing some of these policies were going to work to help some of the human rights stuff and other things that the CCP was doing, we got thrown into this far-right Trump camp. Was weird. That's essentially what's happened is you have a strange manifestation of CCP propaganda against Falun Gong tailored for the West, appearing in some Western media, and that is being coupled with this idea that because some of the Trump policies against China were looked on favorably among our community, that we must be some far-right Trump group.
I think it's not that part. Actually, the second part has happened to other Chinese dissidents too. It's not just Falun Gong.
That's right.
True.
I remember reading this article from Perry Link, who's like a very like seasoned, notable, like highly respected China watcher a couple months ago, where he was kind of like, look, we have to take a serious look at why Chinese dissidents support Trump. And you can't just do this in like a paternalistic way where you're like, well, they don't really understand, you know, he's like, you have to understand like where they're coming from in terms of like the China policy and like understand like why they, because like Chen Guangchen, he spoke at like the RNC convention this summer. And then like that was like a big like controversial thing because a lot of people who had supported him were like, I can't believe that Chen Guangchen would speak at the Republican National Convention. And, you know, a lot of what he was talking about was like standing up to the CCP. And like it's interesting that like we kind of have this tendency to just want to put like U.S. domestic politics and like on top of everything, right? Like
I wonder what those 20 to 40 million Falun Gong practitioners in China think about Trump. Probably they don't think about him at all. Yeah, it goes back to how the Chinese Communist Party is very good at manipulating divides in the United States when they create propaganda.
It's almost like they have 100 years of practice creating power struggles.
Happy birthday, CCP.
Precisely. Yeah, precisely.